When you think about the Oldham County Health Department, immunizations and exams may come to mind. But did you know that we also inspect the restaurants you ate at last week, the swimming pool you swam at this summer, and perhaps provided your child health information at school? Our purpose is to offer preventative health services for all Oldham County residents, of which many are mandated or regulated by the state and federal government. Public health programs exist to protect your health and the health of the community. Some of the health department's programs are available at our health clinic, but many others are provided in your neighborhood, in schools, hotels, businesses, in your home, and beyond.
I am here to talk about little children, and I am here to talk about them, hopefully in a way that will engage your thinking in new possibilities. What we know, and it sounds trite, it takes a village to raise a child, that is becoming increasingly so. Right now, when children fail, we blame schools. We say, oh, schools are the problem, and we point fingers at teachers at schools. And I'm going to say it's time for us as communities to look at ourselves, to think of what we do and how we can help our smallest citizens. How do we change their prophecy? How do we change the prophecy for some of our smallest children? So I'm going to tell you why, not because it's good, although it is so good. I'm going to tell you why for our country, for this region, for this community, it's important that we engage in early childhood work together. All right, we're going to take a look at why it's important for us to invest in our smallest citizens. So I'm going to ask you a question. What does success look like in Kentucky? Like Casey Stengel said, we don't know if we've got there unless we know where we're going. What does success look like in Kentucky? For most of us, it's a strong and healthy economy. You're going to have trouble seeing this, I'm sure. Creating and growing and attracting good jobs, a good quality of life, and good schools. We measure that in tax dollars, creating an infrastructure that supports all of those things. Without tax dollars, none of those things are important. It's kind of interesting that we say that this week, of all weeks, talking about tax dollars. I want you to change your view of success. I want to think of success as children achieving their goals. A CEO, a scientist, a teacher. How do we get there from here? Of the top 15 jobs that are available right now in our country, only 6 of them even existed in the year 2000, 13 years ago. So let's go 13 years from now, when our little kindergartners are graduating. We can predict that the jobs they're going to have to be ready for are markedly different. We can't even imagine what those jobs are like. So we're preparing our children for a future that we can't see. There's probably been no time in the history of our country that the technology and the jobs have changed so dramatically and so quickly that we're preparing children for a world that we, as adults and people who work with children, cannot even envision. Here's the new math of future success. Strong families, quality early learning opportunities, good health, and supportive communities. It's going to take all of that for us to have school success. It's going to take that, and it's going to start before the child walks into kindergarten. About 50% of the children who enter Kentucky schools, and I can't speak specifically about Oldham County, but I can talk about our state. 5 years ago, it was 42% are not ready for kindergarten. This year, it's over 50% are not ready for kindergarten. They do not have the readiness skills they need. Here's the new math of future success as well. We need early learning, we need school success, we need high school graduation, and we need college attendance. I'm going to show you some statistics that talk about the importance of preparing children for post-secondary education. As I spoke to kindergarten parents at LaGrange, college started last August for them. The moment that child steps foot into a school, that child is on the path to college. That is the prophecy we must put in place for the children who attend our schools today. During the last recession, if you did not have a college diploma, about 17% of us were unemployed or had job loss, or we were underemployed. The one protection our society offered was college education. Less than 5% of college-educated people lost their jobs. So it is not only for the benefit of the human, for our human capital to engage our children and to be fulfilled, it's also for their lives, for our economy, for the future of our country. It is a pay it forward in a way that we probably never envisioned would be as important as it is today. And that's why I'm here. I'm here because I feel that the success of the smallest of our citizens is going to predict for us the future of this country. And I am joined by some of a Nobel Prize-winning economist out of the University of Chicago, James Heckman, asked to predict in the year 2050, what was our country going to be like? What would we need to put in place today to ensure that our country would still lead the world in the year 2050? And he studied everything. And he came to one very startling conclusion: early childhood education. This is an economist. So we're not talking about an educator. We're not talking about a social worker. We're not talking about someone who works at the health department. We're talking about an economist who said that the investment in the very young is that which pays us back in our society. Study after study shows that a child who comes to school ready for success is more likely to do well, to graduate, to go to college, and to be successful in life. In fact, we're beginning to study what makes a child ready for kindergarten, and we're beginning to understand it's not just being ready to read, it's being ready to do math, it's being ready to cooperate, it's being ready to play, it's having rich oral language. All of those are things that are in our hands, that are possible for us to do when we work together. It can happen for the smallest children here. The equation for school success may be simple. The situation may sound simple, but it's worse for families from families who have low wages. And by the time they get to third grade, they're a year behind. By the time they get to fifth, they're 2 years behind. And we can predict that downward trend for the rest of their educational life. 40% of America's kindergartners are behind. Children from low-wage families are 1 to 2 years more behind in language. I'm going to go ahead and read some of this because you really can't see it. Preschoolers in high-income brackets score 60% higher in cognitive or intellectual skills than those in the lowest brackets. This achievement gap that we read about, it starts before the school doors open. It starts before the school doors even open for that child. The gap is present from day one. And we're working with kindergarten teachers, and we're working with K-1 teachers, but the truth is, it has to start earlier, and it has to start with you. Of the 50% of children who have trouble learning to read in kindergarten, 44 of them will still have trouble in third grade. So we see that we're not doing enough in our kindergartens. We're not doing enough in our first grades. So we have children they start behind, and unfortunately, they stay behind. They stay behind. My point here today, though, is education equals economic development. Whether we're talking about training the workforce of the future or access to good child care, to give today's children everything they need to be ready, the fact is education is economic development. And we're in Oldham County. When I first moved here several years ago, realtors said, you want to live in Jefferson County, or wouldn't you rather live in Oldham County? This county is already known for its schools. But things are changing. There are many, many children who have many, many needs. This is a community that can continue to ensure that the children who leave Oldham County schools have the brightest future possible. But it's going to start before they cross that kindergarten door. Early childhood education supports the bottom line. Lack of child care leads to employees' absences, costing employers $3 billion a year. How many of you are parents? How many of you have had to miss work, go in late, call in sick, do something because your child care fell through? Now, that's not suggesting that it's poor child care. That's probably a happenstance for all of us. But for families who have poor child care, irregular child care, or changing child care, that is a loss of productivity, a loss of, and often for them, a loss of employment. If you make $9 an hour and you don't show up 2 days, 1 week, you're not going to keep your job. That costs us. That costs us as taxpayers. A dramatic and recent example of the importance of child care is the fact that the Gulf Coast leaders identified child care as 3 critical issues that needed attention to rebuild their economy after Katrina. It wasn't housing, it wasn't jobs, it was housing, jobs, and children. Because they couldn't put people to work if there was no one to take care of their children, if there was no one reliable, trained, and safe to take care of their children. And we're talking more about than child care here. We're talking about education, child education. 20% of today's workforce is functionally illiterate. 1 out of every 5. And that is reading or doing math under the 6th grade level. Emergence of new technology raises the stakes even more. Someone asked me the other day, said, Cooter, why? Why is it different now? What has changed? Is the level of illiteracy changed? No, not markedly. What has changed is the need for literacy. We have become a service economy. We are an economy that is dependent on literate, technologically, mathematically, and scientifically literate citizenry. So this lack of literacy has an impact far, far greater than it did even a decade ago, and certainly 2 decades ago. As baby boomers retire, fewer well-educated workers are here to sustain our competitiveness. There's actually going to be a decline in the skilled workforce as people like me begin to retire. 1 in 3 children are born in poverty in this country, 1 in 4 in Kentucky. And by the age of 5, they're already developmentally behind. Let's get rid of some things about poverty as well. The poorest children in America are white children. The poorest children in America are rural white children. Kentucky has large numbers of rural white children who live in poverty. Certainly we can talk about urban kids and minority kids and second language kids and immigrant children as having those issues with poverty. But poverty covers every ethnicity, every linguistic difference in every area of this country. This is a relatively, well, it's not relatively, it's a very poor state. And we have many, many children for whom poverty is a risk factor that schools are struggling to overcome. And we're going to be asking that communities join us in overcoming some of those struggles of poverty. There's a major drag on U.S. competitiveness and productivity and a source of costly social problems. This is how Heckman put it when he laid out the workforce demographic. This was for the Committee for Economic Development held by the President. We are going to become less competitive and less productive if we do not have an educated workforce. We can turn this ship around. We know how to do it. This is not rocket science. We must invest in what are the drivers of success in our country. It requires reframing this paradigm to define early education as an economic investment. I'm going to read to you a little bit about what Heckman wrote. University of Chicago economist Heckman, Nobel Prize winning economist by the way, reviewed the studies and examined the relative merits of investment at different ages. He concluded that investing in early childhood education is offered the best rates of economic and social returns. The Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis said there's a 12% return on rate for children when you invest in early childhood. In fact, some of the estimates go as high as for every dollar we invest, we get $20 back. Now you're saying, why? How does that make sense? Because people who are educated well don't go to prison. People who are educated well stay healthy. They live longer. They have less family issues. They have less mental health issues. There's just a cascade of positive effects that occur when we educate our very smallest citizens. Here's our return on our investment. It shows you what happens when we invest when they're little, when we invest when they're older. What we do as a society is we do after-school programs, we do adult literacy programs, we do job training programs, we do them for adults. So we invest more at adult stages, but our return on investment is least as kids age and as people mature. So actually what we're seeing is the more we invest, the lower our rate of return as people get older. So if we're thinking about ourselves as not only educators, people who care about children, but as citizens concerned about our community and its future, we need to be thinking about where are we putting our money? Where are we putting our energy? We need to be placing it where we're getting what we call that ROI, or return on investment. And so I'm speaking to you kind of with the collar of a businesswoman here. It's clear that children getting the right early childhood education will come to school more prepared. But when we track their progress over time, we see long-term positive effects. When I give this talk, people will say, well, Kathy, what about that Head Start fade stuff? What happens to the Head Start fade? Well, there is something called the Head Start fade. We give children Head Start, we give another group doesn't get Head Start. By the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade, they come out about the same. And we say, well, why did we invest that much in them? Well, for one thing, the children who go to Head Start have lots of other factors that influence them other than just school. But the other thing is that's when we study it there, that's one outcome. But when you track it over the long term, what happens? Kids who are in good Head Start programs graduate from high school. Kids who are in good Head Start programs don't get pregnant when they're teens. Kids in good Head Start programs graduate from high school. So when we measure the outcome here, it's not looking too good. But when we measure the outcome in what we should be measuring, and that is long-term citizenry, healthy, productive, caring citizens, we see a very different picture. And we have stories of great early childhood programs all over this country. Nothing I'm saying to you is new. Nothing. Not one thing. It's just, I want you to change the lens that we're looking at. We're going to look at this as citizens and economists. The path to productivity starts early. Early childhood development programs are rarely portrayed as economic development initiatives, and that is a mistake. Federal Reserve. It is economically. It is to this community's benefit to begin to partner with schools, health departments, child care centers, Head Starts, and preschools, and work together so that we create a group of youngsters who walk into school ready to learn. Because our investment then is going to serve us all as investment later. Children learn. This is another thing that I think all of us have heard about, and we're beginning to understand some of the brain research in new ways. But I'm going to kind of take you a little back into Child Psychology 101 and tell you how these two things kind of mesh. The first few years. So what happens in the first few years so that learning is so important? That is when the brain architecture is built. I want you to think about childhood development like a contractor. When a contractor, and we're about to build a home, the contractor digs the trench and he lays out a foundation. And that foundation, you know where the bathroom's going to be, you know exactly where the garage is going to be, you know how you're going to enter the house. The foundation sets the stage for everything else that happens. And that's what we're beginning to find out about babies. And again, we just begin to actually look at what's happening in little babies' brains. We know that this is now an important piece of research that's going all over this country. How, when we talk to a baby, what happens? We can actually track it now. New? Yes. Did we know it was important? Yes. I think we're beginning to understand how brilliant babies are. How absolutely brilliant babies are. This architecture is critical. We are contractors. We know that certain things actually weaken the foundation. Stress weakens the foundation. Drugs weaken the foundation. An environment that's not enriched weakens the foundation. So we have to work with what we have, yes, but we also must understand how important this foundation is. Children are born learning. We have to have loving, nurturing relationships, and we have to have everyday moments are learning moments. I often tell this story. I'm beginning to hate cell phones. I mean, I'm really beginning to hate them. And not that I'm not dependent, almost umbilically dependent on mine, but I'm going to suggest that what's happening to our children is we are beginning not to talk to them. I'm in Kroger's. Carol's probably already heard this story. And I'm in Kroger's, and I see a mama, and she's dressed like work dress. You know, I know she's come from work, because I've come from work. We both come from work. And she's got this little, maybe 16 to 18-month-old boy, little plump pumpkin of a baby, sitting in the basket. And she's talking on the cell phone. And I think she had one of those ear fobby things. So she's talking on the cell phone. And to me, I'm thinking, I bet you haven't seen this baby all day. I bet you haven't seen this baby all day long. She's been working, it's clear. And so the baby starts fussing and talking and pointing and beginning to pull, so she moves the cart away, continues talking. Finally, the baby is going to get her attention, and he starts really squawking, and I think he kicks her. And babies can kick pretty hard. So I'm sorry, Adrian, I've got to hang up. Matthew's misbehaving. She reaches over, she smacks him on the leg. He's throwing a fit and reaching and such like this. And I'm thinking to myself, if I were to ask you right now, Mama, what is the most important thing in your life? You would say, this baby, Matthew, or whatever his name was, Matthew. And yet, for these last 4 or 5 minutes, when you could have been interacting with this baby you haven't seen all day, you're on your cell phone. Or, I've seen this, and I've seen this at some of the schools out here, the baby's getting the back seat from kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and the mother turns on a DVD. So that the child's actually sitting in the back seat kind of mesmerized by some moving picture instead of talking to their child. So technology in some ways has really helped us, but when we talk about those important interactions with the baby, those critical interactions that make that baby's brain grow, we're beginning, I think, across all socioeconomic classes to deny that. Or worse yet, we buy things, baby Einsteins, and some of the other little gadgets. What are some of the gadgets you bought for your kids? It's okay, you can tell me. iPods, iPads, early learning systems, baby computers. I mean, come on, it's okay, we can say we did that. But what do we know about those things? They do nothing to stimulate brain growth. Nada, not a thing. In fact, the American Association of Pediatricians said a child shouldn't even see a screen before they're 2 years old. Yeah, now we're all going to have guilt here. And then from 2 to 12, they should spend 1 hour a day in front of a screen. Any screen. Any screen. So now all of you are thinking, oh Lord, what kind of a parent am I? What kind of a grandparent am I? What kind of a teacher am I? But I'm suggesting to you that has become part and parcel of our behavior. But what we know about those things is that does not increase brain size. That does not increase cognition. I do not care how much you paid for it, how mechanical it is, unless it involves human interaction. We're not going to see brain growth. You know who knows this? Sesame Street. Sesame Street studied. You know, those are like $2 million episodes every time we see one. We're talking an incredible amount of money. So probably 15 years ago, they said, you know, what's going on with our learners? How are they learning from the Children's Television Workshop? And they compared themselves to Mr. Rogers, and who cost maybe $30,000 an episode. I mean, there was really nothing to that set, let's be honest. I mean, you walked up and you did little hand puppets and there's a little train. I mean, it wasn't much. But when they compared the two, they said, okay, wait a minute, why is Mr. Rogers getting more bang for the buck? And I mean, kids were learning from Mr. Rogers, and they were not learning as much from the Children's Television Workshop. And what was that about? And what they realized was, and you'll remember this, when he would talk to the boys and girls, the TV would move up and down. Good morning, boys and girls. Are you feeling good today? And the TV would go up and down. And he would talk to them about their feelings. And he would wait as if they were really responding to him. So in the end, Children's Television Workshop said, you know what? Let's change the way we do things. And instead of Bert talking to Ernie, let's have Bert talk to them. And so it really changed the way that even we did some of our television. What we know is it's human interaction that increases brain size. Positive human interaction. Learning is happening every single minute. Every single second that baby is learning. In a child care center, at a neighborhood, children are born learning. You can teach a child within 2 and 3 hours after birth to stick its tongue out. They're brilliant. They are absolutely brilliant. That a child who'd been in darkness for all of this time, in a watery, warm bath, could come out and with hours recognize certainly mother's voice, father's voice, and imitate a behavior. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. I can't do that when I get up in the morning. I mean, seriously, it's just amazing to me what God has created. We know that a parent's loving interaction is what makes a child ready for language, ready for school, ready for language. And we undervalue that. Parents and caregivers dramatically undervalue their role in school readiness. 1 in 3 incorrectly believe that their loving interaction has little impact on a child's learning capacity. Just the opposite. Only 1 in 3. It's not what I do, it's what I give them to do. No. It's what you do. You can give them a ball, a box, and some dirt, which, think about it, generations of families, that's their toys, and they did pretty well. Einstein did not have baby Einstein. A major factor for parents is a lack of time. In particular, we find that women are time-starved. Whether they work out of the home or not, they do not feel like they have time to get their children ready for school. So we have to help people where they are understand how critical they are in brain development. It is not just a socioeconomic gap. 80% of preschool teachers say parents lack understanding about their child's development. So parents don't understand what comes next. How do I do this? And then they go to sources on the internet and begin to find out and diagnose and do all of these things because they really do not understand that child development is well sequenced and with interaction children develop. But it has to be focused, positive interaction. Teachers rank social and emotional skills as the most important school readiness. The ability to follow directions, to sit down, to follow tasks, to cooperate, to go to the bathroom by yourself, to zip your own pants. Those are skills that gets a child ready to participate and meaningfully be part of a group. A few years ago, Jim Baree conducted a study of 5,000 preschool teachers around the country. And what they found was that parents really don't understand what a child needs to be ready for school. So they're teaching them the letters and they're teaching them how to write their names, but they're not teaching them to wait or to sit quietly or to inhibit a response. The challenge. The best way to develop a well-educated and well-trained workforce for the future is to start early. This is the governor of North Carolina. And this is the only way we're going to have a workforce for our future. Early learning is a business issue. It is a business issue. Strong schools are a business issue. People move here because you have good schools. People move to places because move out of places because they don't like the schools. They choose private or independent schools. They choose jobs because of where their kids are going to go to school. It is an economic issue. Ask any realtor. More and more business leaders are responding to the challenge, and we're trying to mobilize communities around young children. Yesterday, I spoke to the International Kiwanis. They met at Bellarmine, and their focus is on early childhood. And they've done some things I'm going to show you, but I'm going to tell you Kiwanis and other groups, the Rotary, Chambers of Commerce, are also beginning to consider that there is a business case for early childhood education. It is a business case for early childhood. It can help our communities and our nation grow. Obama has a plan. I don't know enough about it to tell you if it's good or bad or indifferent, but I'm going to suggest to you the fact that we're actually getting attention at the federal level for education of children under the age of 5 is significant. And I think it's responsive to this growing body of research about what's happening to our country, particularly when we talk about the gap between scientists and engineers. We are importing scientists and engineers at rates that are literally frightening, in that not that they're immigrants to our country, but that we do not have the workforce to support some of our own technological needs, and particularly in engineering. It's a call to action, and this is where I am today. It is certainly clear from a business point of view that this should be the new national imperative. We have to look at private-public solutions. Schools cannot do everything. When schools fail, yes, we can blame the schools, but when schools fail, we also must indict the society that created the children and the families that fed into those schools. Schools, yes, they bear some blame and they bear much burden. But when it comes to the case of youngsters who struggle, it is not just a school problem. It is a community problem, and it is a long-term problem. There is no government-only solution. There is no schools-only solution. The only solution rests in this community. This is the CEO of Principal Financial Group. There is nothing more important for our future than helping children learn. The research proves how important quality early learning is for brain and cognitive development. All of us must step up and improve conditions for children in neighborhoods where they need it most. What can you do? You can support early learning in your business and community. This community has a school-sponsored pre-K. You've got Head Start, but you've got some excellent child care centers. You as community members must partner with them. Make sure that every child is getting not only child care, but getting quality child care, getting the materials and resources they need, and the trained personnel to make sure that those children have what they need to enter our schools. Aside from that, and frankly in one aspect more important, we must begin working with parents. There's one class most of us don't take in high school, is parenting. We don't take it in college either. So we have a group of parents who are stressed by their own job responsibilities, by their family responsibilities, by life itself. And we must help them understand the power that they have to influence the path of their children. You must play business must play a leadership role. Policy solutions. Most early childhood programs are funded by the states and controlled by state legislators. And our state right now has a governor who speaks very much about early childhood, and there's an early childhood initiative. However, I will say that like most initiatives that affect children, they're relatively unfunded. And if we wait, if we as a community, as a state, wait for our state government to have the funds and the resources and the will, children are going to wither while we wait. This is not a complex problem. This is a problem that we can, right now, every day, attack. I'm going to show you a way that it's been done. In the early 1990s, we began to study infant mortality in our country. For a very wealthy country, we have a very high rate of infant mortality. In Memphis, Tennessee, a child has a better chance of dying than they do if they were born in Haiti before the age of 1. A baby dies in Memphis every 43 minutes. And they're buried 7 at a time in a Potter's cemetery. Well, it took that kind of awareness to make that community change. That community leaders, to say, we cannot have this. We must stop babies from dying. And of course, that appeals to our most human of emotions, is to stop that. So a group put together the Back to Sleep movement. Many of you have heard of it. It was community members. In the end, it did get some federal funding through grants, but it was people who said, enough is enough. We must stop this. We must find ways to reach parents. We must find ways as a community that we can partner and make the children of this community healthy. And they did. In a 3-year period, they reduced death of children under 1 by over 40%. And now it's something like over 70%. And most of you have heard of the Back to Sleep movement. And it was not started by some federal agency with lots of money. It was started by a community. I was lucky enough to be a little part of it. And what they did was create things for parents at a low literacy level. This particular one was for African American babies, but there's different, they were very culturally sensitive, hung on the back picture. This is not hard. This is not hard. There's a little manual, so everyone has the same script when they talk to parents. I mean, it was just beautifully done, and it changed the life paths and trajectories of babies, and thus of families. I'm going to suggest to you, although infant mortality is certainly a more pressing and obvious issue, I'm going to suggest to you, when our children do not do what they should do in life, it is a death of the cognition, it is a death of the brain. It is for all of us a loss. Perhaps not as profound as that, but just as real in terms of life outcomes. When we think about the cradle to prison pipeline, it's not the school to prison pipeline, it's the cradle to prison pipeline. We can stop that, or at least avert its path. by creating early childhood programs that teach children the skills they need to succeed in school. Here's the public spending and what our brain research tells us. It's a tremendous disconnect. What we spend, what we know about the brain, and where we spend it. We know a great deal about the brain before the age of 5, but we don't spend any money nurturing it. It's pretty clear. And I hate to put everything in terms of money, but in the end, when we talk about economic development, that's what it is. It is money. The cost to incarcerate a person, something $32,000 a year, I may be misquoting that, but certainly many times more what it takes to educate a child. This is some of the policy solutions that have been suggested. Voluntary 3 and 4 preschool. We want access to early childhood education, particularly for working families. We want to increase the number and quality of preschools. We want to ensure children are better prepared, and we want to increase the value of the K-12 investment. The way we do that is getting kids ready for it. Access is the key. Children are our future. I think for me, because I'm an early childhood person, for me it's just human capital. We all know someone who in life has not achieved what we thought they could. We look at them and say, you know, and I remember as a teacher saying, usually some boy, James, you are so bright. I can't get my head around why you're not doing more. And I think unless we begin to invest in children very small, we're going to have a lot of children who will never reach their own human capital. We have to invest in the very young. This is one of the things that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to actually be working with people to use this very PowerPoint, but we're going to change it a little bit, and we want it to go to moms and dads. And we're going to talk about what we call the $1 million difference. $1 million is the difference between a high school graduate, lifetime's earning, and a college graduate. Actually, kind of depending on the economy, it varies between $850,000 over a lifetime to $1.1 million. And of course, if you're a post-grad, like a doctor, it's going to be even markedly different. But we know that right now, the difference between a high school and a college degree is a huge, huge financial difference. It's $1 million difference. So when I talk to parents, and I try very hard to make sure that we always positively presuppose that parents want the best for their children. Parents love their children. They may not love them in the way that we love our children, but they love their children. Parents want the best for their children. And so one of the ways that we are going to begin is to start at the family level. Let's get moms and dads to know some very basic things that they can do at home that will get their child ready for school and ready for that $1 million. Ready for that $1 million. Here's 5 things, and I talk to moms and dads about this all the time. I'm going to have to read this because it's kind of hard to read up there. Talk to your child. A real conversation. Research done in the 1990s said that we talk to our children, but we talk to them in directives. Sit down, stand up, finish your plate, get your backpack. Where's your shoes? We do a lot of directives. That is not real conversation. Conversation is return and serve. Serve and return. We don't do a lot of that with our children. I'm also going to tell you that the people who are worst at that, men in here, cover your ears, are dads. You're terrible at it. You're not good at across all socioeconomic classes. However, once you tell dads that and work with them a little bit, they're actually better than moms. So they're trainable. I guess that's what we can say. We find that, however, most dads speak only between 11 and 14 minutes of true conversation a week with their children. We also know that parents are, particularly low-income parents, do 5 more prohibitions. Sit down, I said pick that up, finish your piece, than they do acclamations or reinforcement. Oh, I love the way you're doing that. They actually do 5 times as many negative statements as they do positives. Well, the message a child gets from that is overwhelmingly negative. And they begin to respond only to negative. And certainly those of us who have been in schools understand that's some of what we see in little children. I want parents to use big, fat, juicy words. I was in a car with a little 2-year-old on the way to the airport one time, and he heard a siren, and his mother was in the front seat, and she said, "Jason, do you hear that?" And he, 2 years old, he said, "Someone has made a very, very bad choice." 2 years old. And he didn't, those words didn't get planted into his head just serendipitously. His mother had said to him many, many times these kinds of big, fat, juicy words. Talk is money in the brain bank. When we feed talk into a baby's brain, we can watch the neurons connect. The neurons connect faster in early childhood, and there's more of them than there are later. Those that are not used are pruned. They're pruned. So we have to create this rich roadmap of language very, very early on. So it is reading to a newborn. Oh, reading picture books with your child. It is that kind of constant dialogue that creates those brain connections, that sets the stage for the language that child will need to be a scientist, a lawyer, an engineer, a teacher. That is set so early. The easiest thing we can do and teach parents to do is to speak in sentences. I speak incomplete sentences. When we get children to speak in complete sentences, we teach them verb tense, we teach them sentence length, we teach them vocabulary. And once you talk in complete sentences, teachers see them begin to write in complete sentences, to think in complete sentences. But right now, when you go into a classroom or into a daycare center, what you see is this kind of staccato, abrupt, all right, time to sit, let's go. Thinking that's how we should talk to little children. That's just the opposite of how we should talk to little children. We should be talking in big, fat, juicy words in incomplete sentences. And what you'll see is babies talking back in complete sentences. I work with teen mothers in Memphis, and there's a lot of them in Memphis, and I brought a young mom up to the front of an auditorium with her little baby once, and we were kind of playing with this. And I said, just watch. I want you to keep talking to this baby. His name was Jamal. Keep talking to Jamal. Talk to him a little bit and watch what happens to his babbling. And in front of this huge audience, of course, babies are so in love with their mothers. He's looking, he's got that wonderful sustained gaze with his mother, and she keeps talking to him, and she raises her voice a little bit, and this baby begins to babble longer and longer and longer. He's already imitating speaking in complete sentences. He must have been maybe 8 years old, a little pumpkin. And it's so clear that is a powerful, and all of us know this. If you raised a child and you said a word you probably shouldn't have said in front of that child, sooner or later you hear the child say the word, "Where did he get this?" "Oh, I don't know, must be the bus." You know where the child gets it. Yeah. We have to give our children positive messages. We have to become prophets for our children. Parents are the prophets of their children's lives. I'm not good at math, so you won't be good at math. Guess what? That baby won't be good at math. Parents do not understand the power of their influence to make changes for their children. I tell the story of a friend of mine. He's actually an assistant to the provost at Texas Christian University, and he was the last of 17 children. I think East St. Louis. That kind of says it all. By the time he was born, his oldest brother was already in prison. And when he was born, his mother said to the nurse, "Not this baby. I'm not sacrificing this baby. This baby's going to have a different life." And she turned to the nurse and said, "Tell me the name of a college." So the nurse, "Name of a college? What?" So she said, "Cornell." "Cornell." And so the mother named the baby Cornell. And so his whole life, he was told he was going to go to Cornell. He didn't go. But he did, obviously, he's a Dr. Cornell, so he actually did go to college. 17th kid, only one who went. But the prophecy was different. And parents do not understand the power of that prophecy. They do not understand it. And so those are some of the things we can teach parents. We can work with parents to do. Some final thoughts. If you're planning for a year sow rice. If you're planning for a decade, plant trees. If you're planning for a lifetime, educate people. And start right at the very beginning, right at the very beginning.
When you think about the Oldham County Health Department, immunizations and exams may come to mind. But did you know that we also inspect the restaurants you ate at last week, the swimming pool you swam at this summer, and perhaps provided your child health information at school? Our purpose is to offer preventative health services for all Oldham County residents, of which many are mandated or regulated by the state and federal government. Public health programs exist to protect your health and the health of the community. Some of the health department's programs are available at our health clinic, but many others are provided in your neighborhood, in schools, hotels, businesses, in your home, and beyond. This show has been brought to you by the Oldham County Fiscal Court, community television for Oldham County.